So what I thought I would do, since you're all college students, I wanted to read a short but complete horror story about something that I'm guessing that all students, all college students understand. It's a horror story about debt. I'm assuming you're all going into debt to some degree or another in your lives. If you're not, then, well, if you're trying to be writers, you will be. So, this story is just called Debt. Her cell phone rang for the 10th time in an hour, and for the 10th time, she let it go to voicemail. When she opened her purse on the sidewalk, it was only to get her keys. She entered the lobby of her building, but before she reached the elevator, the phone rang again. Reception died inside the rising car, and she breathed audibly with relief. The doors opened, and she walked the hallway to her apartment. 20 feet from her door, the phone buzzed again. She jiggled her purse and her dinner and unzipped the purse, ready to throw the phone at the wall. But when she saw the number, a 305 area code. She pressed the button quick. "Mom, are you okay?" "Samantha Cooley, I have been ringing this phone since morning." It wasn't her mother. It was a man. Samantha stiffened. Samantha. It was her father. His calls were as rare as a solar eclipse. She set down her bags, hung her head. "I'm sorry, Dad. I thought you were someone else." Her father cleared his throat twice, a tick that meant trouble. "Someone came to our window," he said quietly, "and smashed it." Samantha touched the walls for pounds. "What are you talking about?" Her father raised his voice slightly and enunciated each word. "A man walked into the yard of our home and smashed our kitchen window with a brick." "Oh my God," Samantha said. "Are you all right? Is Mom?" "Your mother and I were in the living room, so we weren't hurt." Samantha realized where she was now, standing in the hallway of a building she'd been living in for only 3 months. She felt exposed. She picked up her purse and 2 plastic bags and walked. Okay, she said, reaching her door. "No one's hurt, that's good." She rifled through her purse for her keys again, tilting her head and raising her right shoulder to keep the phone pressed to her ear. Her father said, "Before this man ran away, he shouted something. I didn't hear him too well, but your mother did." Samantha found the keys, turned the top lock. The click echoed in the long hall. He said, "Tell your daughter this is about what she owes us." Samantha almost dropped the phone. "Are you serious, Dad? Is this a joke? You think I'd joke about someone attacking your mother and me?" Samantha stepped inside, dropped her purse, and nearly tripped over it. She stumbled forward in the dark while the door slammed shut behind her. "Didn't Mom want to replace the kitchen windows anyway?" she half joked. Her father didn't laugh. "Your mother told me not to call you. She didn't even want to be in the house when I did. You better not be in touch for a while." He hung up. Samantha stepped into the kitchen, holding the bags, the phone still squeezed to her ear. Even though her father wasn't there, she flicked the light switch beside the oven. She could have screamed, but didn't. There, sitting cross-legged on the kitchen floor, his back against the fridge, was a man she didn't know. "You're back," he said, almost pleasantly. Samantha's reaction surprised even herself. She lifted the plastic bag in her right hand and said, "I have Chinese food." The man pushed himself up, brushed the wrinkles on his cheap sport coat. Samantha noticed on the floor in front of him a large pile of her old mail. Maybe he'd been looking for uncashed checks. Arranged on the small breakfast table were her DVD player, an iPod, a coffee maker, and an electric toothbrush. "I'm going to need more than Chinese food," said the man. Samantha felt fear in her toes running up through her legs. She couldn't move. The front door wasn't so far off, but she couldn't even make herself load the bag of food. "You're not," she began, but didn't know how to finish the sentence. "You're not supposed to be here? You're not staying? You're not going to hurt me?" The man stood very tall. He had a long, narrow nose that pointed downward, almost over his lip. He looked like a stork, actually. Samantha tried to memorize his face, but her eyes wouldn't focus. "My name is Paul Horvath," he said. "You didn't answer any of these." He kicked at the stack of mail, "But at least I see you got them." Samantha stared at the pile. "Horvath, where did she know that name?" "If you'd ever picked up your phone, I wouldn't be here now," Horvath said. "And my associate wouldn't have thrown a rock through your parents' window." Now Samantha remembered. "Hello, Mrs. Cooley. My name is Paul Horvath. This concerns an urgent business matter. Would you please return my phone call at..." How many times had she heard that voice, that phrase, and just deleted the message? Dozens? Sometimes there were 9 or 10 calls like that in a single day. Samantha felt her stomach drop like when she was a kid and her mother caught her swiping money from her dad's wallet. Her face was hot, she blinked rapidly. The last thing she wanted to do was cry. To compose herself, she went to the cabinet over the stove and took out 2 plates. She set them on the counter and took out the Chinese food. Brown rice, steamed vegetables, an order of dumplings. At least, said Horvath, eyeing the spread, you're not spending your money on gourmet food. He looked at her, then quickly shook his head as if ridding himself of a moment's sympathy. Samantha opened the white cartons. She said, do you want a fork or can you handle chopsticks? Horvath frowned as if disappointed he hadn't scared her more. Fork, I guess. That helped Samantha relax a little. At one school in Suffolk County, where she'd been a substitute teacher for 2 months, a 13-year-old boy pressed a gun to her thigh when she passed his desk. He just wanted to see her cry, and she had cried. But the experience had toughened her. 2 college degrees, and that's the most she'd earned out in the real world. A little bit of backbone. Samantha opened the drawer for the silverware. The knives shone under the kitchen lights. She pulled out a fork and slid the drawer shut fast. Horvath picked up his plate, but just stared down at the white cartons of food. Samantha served herself. She wanted desperately to run, climb out a window, anything. But instead, she took her plate and sat at the breakfast table. Using her chopsticks, she brought a clump of rice to her mouth and chewed slowly. Horvath finally took a couple dumplings and sat down across from her. The DVD player and the iPod and the coffee maker and the electric toothbrush were in his way. What's that all about, she said, pointing with her chopsticks. Horvath's long nose twitched. Collateral? The DVD player's mine, she said, but not the rest. Horvath looked confused. You have a room? I'm subletting. The place came furnished. Horvath deflated in his chair. I pretty much lived by sublet, Samantha told him. This was true. She'd moved 11 times in the past 6 years. I keep a storage locker up on... She caught herself. I keep a storage locker for clothes. When the summer's over, I go in and get all my winter stuff. When winter's over, I go back and make the switch. She flicked at the shoulder of her white short-sleeved blouse. 4 years old and fraying at the collar, but of luxury when she bought it. Running to teaching assignments all over town had kept her thin, which allowed her to keep wearing the same clothes. That plus she often skipped meals. Horvath shook his head. I don't make much either, but I live a lot better than this. Samantha bit into a piece of broccoli. I used to think suffering was part of the point of coming out here. Low pay, even less respect, the worst junior high schools in the city. She'd actually felt all that was romantic once. You could have paid off something, Horvath said, popping a dumpling into his mouth. On my salary? You could have picked up the phone. Samantha considered this. Despite her wish to defy Horvath, she couldn't really disagree with him. She had, after all, run out on her debts. Now those debts had grown. 30,000 in student loans had, by now, ballooned to nearly 70. She'd never felt she had enough to afford a payment. Not even the minimum of 100 a month. Not even 50. Savings seemed impossible. She'd always assumed she'd get a full-time teaching job someday, a regular income from which she could start to repay. She still believed it would happen. She just hadn't managed it yet. To avoid the whole business, she would move into new sublets before the billing statements could catch up. And she stopped offering forwarding addresses. Maybe the debt would simply disappear if she ignored it long enough. Sometimes she even bought lottery tickets thinking she'd hit and pay off the loan in one lump sum. She kept hoping something would happen, that things would break her way. She knew this wasn't logical, but still, she hoped for it. So what do you want, she said. 5 years I've been after you, Miss Cleveland, and you treated me like a stink bug. I have no doubt that if I let you go, you're just going to disappear again. Samantha didn't want to eat anymore. She didn't even want to look at the food. It's getting late, Samantha. I suggest we come up with some sort of agreement. Samantha looked into Horvath's strangely youthful face. What kind of agreement, she said. Horvath stood up. On reflex, Samantha slid back in her chair. I was in here a while before you got back, said Horvath. I looked through every closet and every drawer. I told you none of this is mine, Samantha said. I understand that, said Horvath, but I have an idea. Samantha watched as Horvath went to the countertop near the oven. He pulled out the drawer containing the silverware. He said, I'm really not asking for much and reached into the drawer. At the hospital, Samantha stuck with her story about hurting herself while cooking dinner. This despite the nurses and the doctor all commenting on just how perfectly clean the wound appeared to be. It was bad enough that the doctor actually called the police. She said she had to because she suspected Samantha might have been a victim of domestic abuse. But Samantha told the cops no more than she told the hospital staff. Her wound was dressed, she was given a prescription for pain medication, and then the cops drove her back to her apartment. They walked her inside and checked every room, but Horvath was long gone. The cops noticed the blood streaked across her kitchen counter and the meat cleaver in the sink. The cops, two good guys, then spent about 15 minutes trying to help her find the top half of her right pinky. She played along with it. When they discovered nothing, she tried to act surprised, but of course she wasn't. She watched Horvath wrap the top half of her finger in some paper towels, which he folded neatly and deposited into the right front pocket of his pants. Samantha walked the police to the door and wished them a good night. Their debt wasn't completely settled, Horvath had explained. He couldn't just erase $69,086.37 with a cut, not just one. But this could count as a kind of payment. Before he raised the cleaver, he'd given her a choice, the finger or a $10,000 payment. He'd give her until the end of the month. He'd waited for her to decide, but of course, there was no real decision to be made. Samantha couldn't imagine going through with it, but already she felt the shock and pain drifting into memory. She even felt a little proud of herself. Horvath was the one who looked squeamish afterward. And when he left, she only owed him $59,086.37. Now, as she got into bed, she held up the wounded hand. The physical pain was bad, but sometimes death felt even worse. Samantha looked at the other hand. She wiggled all 9.5 fingers. $10,000 for half a pinky. How much could she afford to pay down using this new accounting? She closed her eyes. Her phone was silent, and soon she fell asleep. Yes?
I was gonna ask, like, do you often suggest going to grad school, and like, what are the pros and cons of it from your perspective? For writer, like, if you want to become a writer.
Of course, of course. I mean, obviously, if you think about writing, the graduate school phenomenon is incredibly new in the history of writing. Yeah, what is it, 40 years old or something like that, 50 years old? So people have been becoming writers since, I don't know how long you want to go back. If you want to exclude oral storytelling, still it's got to be a good couple hundred years, if not 1,000 or something. Yeah? So it can be done. But what I always feel like people always argue that's why they're doing it for a thing. But what I always try to point out is that the way that people did it previously was, say, if you're thinking about like Hemingway or Catherine Ann Porter, two great writers, they became journalists and they had full-time jobs. And in those jobs, they worked with editors who told them, you're saying too much, cut it down, you're not clear, you're not interesting me as a reader. Essentially, they were being workshopped, right? I mean, it's the same idea, but it was a full-time job. So you just got, and journalism now is like, don't go into that profession. It's what everybody's saying. So that is already, you've got to cut that out. And so before that, you had, we're being totally honest, you had wealthy people whose families could give them money to live on, or they found a patron, if they were not wealthy, like say Caravaggio was a painter, they found really wealthy patrons who covered their butts. So, if you can find one of those other things, do that. You know what I mean? You don't go into debt for that. The other thing I would say is, if you're going to do an MFA, I teach at Columbia. It's a very expensive program, and there's not all that much financial aid. I would suggest in every way, do not go into debt to become a writer if you can help. Columbia was the only place I got in, so what could I do? It was my fault. But if you are willing to leave New York in particular, there are tons of programs with money, with wonderful writers teaching there. So if that's your desire, just to think strategically, how do I come out of here at least at zero? And that would be, you go somewhere that gives you money. You go live in another place. If you're from New York, you get the joy of living in another place and not being so New York centric. If you're not from New York, maybe you go back to where you're from, or you go to a new place, you see the world a little bit instead of just being in your room or hanging out with your friends, which is great, but makes for a limited amount of stories to tell, I would suggest. No offense. from my own experience, there's a limited amount. What realistically for me, I went straight from undergraduate to graduate school for my MFA, and it was largely because I had a terrifically bad undergraduate experience, meaning I failed. I graduated, but I got kicked out of school for a semester and had to work. I had a dean tell me, I will never let you come back into this school. I was such a terrible student in a very boring way, not even like fun. I'm sorry, that's not a joke today, right? Anymore? And not even a fun getting drunk really badly way. No, that's probably not a joke. But I got kicked out. It was a terrible experience. I barely passed, and I felt like if I don't do this immediately, I'm just going to spiral into the depression I'm already in and just self-destruct. And I was terrified of that path, because I saw it in family members close to me and friends close to me, and I if I'm honest, I detested them for failing, as I saw it as a younger person who was very arrogant. So I did not want to fail, and so I clung to the MFA as like my last, as the life vest, because I really felt like I was drowning. So that's a very specific reason for going right afterward and even being moved to go into debt, is because I'm just dying to get something working. So if you have other things going on, there's other circumstances, there are so many other ways to make that choice. Going away for, honestly, like living for a little while, working, or traveling, whatever you can do, and then going to an MFA. The great thing is, then you don't do what I did for a little portion of my MFA, which is here's all these stories about me drinking too much as an undergrad. Now I can't imagine anything duller. At the time, it just really seemed like this is the truth. You got to tell the truth. And thankfully, every teacher I had told me this is terrible. Or it's just boring. Who cares? You got drunk in this place, okay? You got drunk in that place, and then you felt really bad. And I did, so I chuckled at them. But so that I don't know if that answers the question, but I think there was a lot that I needed from the MFA. I needed structure, and I needed something to be responsible to. Other people are better about being personally responsible. Do you know what I mean? Or frankly, other people need jobs because they have other responsibilities. All those things will change your decision. But under those circumstances, that's why I made that decision. Yes.
When you write your novels, do you plan out every instance, every scene that's going to happen, or do you just sort of let the story take you places you didn't expect, just let it sort of evolve?
That's changed over time. In the beginning, my first book was a book of stories, and all those stories began with one sentence, and then I just would go wherever it went. And as I got into longer stuff like novels, it's harder to do that because you can really go anywhere. But the danger, right, is nobody finds you as interesting as you find yourself, right? That's just a human reality, problem. Even if self-loathing is still a form of self-interest. So no matter how, no one cares about you like you care about you. And the hard part about just writing, just wherever I want to go is, at least for me, I found the danger is then suddenly I'm like, oh, I really do need a whole chapter on the character at the supermarket, deciding which cereal he should get, and going into different childhood memories about different cereals. And the trauma of Captain Crunch when he was 6, and the trauma of Kix when he was 9, and what his awful mom or uncle or dad did to him at those different, And I luckily had a friend who said, this is boring, right? And it was boring. And it was boring because I wasn't thinking with my reader in any way. I wasn't communicating anything. I was just sort of venting a bunch of stuff. But by just letting myself go, I found I can go on endlessly about all the wonderful facets of me. And I can beat myself up, and I can secretly talk myself up, and all that stuff. And so I found in the last 2 books, what I've done is start to have very loose kind of outlines, which really fall into more like, here's where I want us to start off. I want something to happen, that leads me to this. This idea, the thing that sometimes gets lost. I found as in my own MFA experience and teaching MFA, is the idea that a story, on some level, there's some value in one thing causing the next thing. And having some degree of, like saying, my last, with the previous novel, Big Machine, I say I want this guy to start out as a janitor in a bus station in Utica, New York. But I know I want to get him to Vermont. He has to go find a secret society in the woods of Vermont. I don't know why he has to, but that's what I'm interested in. So then it becomes, okay, how are you going to get him from the bus station to Vermont? Because I've written that in my little outline. So then I say, oh, what if he gets a mysterious letter? Mysterious letters are always interesting to me, right? So a mysterious letter shows up at his door, and then you say, okay, he gets there, and then what is he going to do there? And then the next part of my outline was actually like, it just said he works at this secret society. And then the next thing was then he goes to California to go kill somebody on a mission. But even that, you sort of say, like, that's too much of it. I need to come up with quite a bit in there. So there's room for me to do whatever strikes my interest while I'm in between those sort of tentpole kind of things. But I have those now because otherwise I will just spin my wheels in one place and continuously find things I think are interesting there. And the other thing that can happen, I find to writers, generally speaking, is your job is sitting at a desk. It is astounding, no matter what I found in early drafts of my work and the work of my students, no matter what the story claims they are doing, it feels like people are just sitting at desks. Do you know what I mean? So like, she was a world-renowned lion tamer who just lost her arm. She sat down and talked with her friend about how bad it had been. And then we get a flashback within that to she walked into the cage. And it's actually a really vibrant scene. But in reality, all it is a one-armed lady sitting at a table talking to another another person. That's another story. But talking to another person, and I've come to believe the only reason that is the sort of default mode of so many stories is because we are sitting at desks, and it is very hard to, as I find, it's very hard to think your way out of your current physical state when you are writing. So one of the things I do for my student, like when I teach a very easy, simple exercise, I say, write a scene, like a paragraph to a page long, of a character lying in the grass, thinking about, you choose what, right? And then they'll say, he lay down in the grass and looked up at the stars. He felt like he was back in his bed at home. And then he remembered when his dad came in and would beat him with a tractor or something. You know what I mean? Go back to a terrible thing, and blah, 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 blah. And the whole page would just be, and then he got up from the grass and went inside. And then I say to the students, okay, now let's go outside and lie down in the grass. And the first thing is, nobody wants to lie down in the grass. Because everyone's like, these clothes are nice, but we do it. And then they lie down in the grass, and I say, now write the same scene. And then they say, there was a rock sticking into the back of his ear. And there was a wet spot he hadn't felt with his shoes, but he hoped it wasn't dog piss. Even more, he hoped it wasn't human piss. And then there was a bus that beeped and beeped and beeped, and they get through a whole page, and there's no space for diving into all these thoughts and these, there's no space to go into this sort of introspective, interior everything, because they're actually doing the thing that they were writing about, and they are reminded how many sensory details exist in any moment that you are doing a thing. Yeah? And so then I tell them, now the last step is we go back inside, and the idea is to put the two together, because you don't want it to be all details and action, just as you don't want it to be all introspection. So together you say, the stone was sticking into the back of his neck, into the back of his ear, and that bus would stop beeping and beeping, and it reminded him of when his father would pick him up at school, and for reasons he couldn't understand, he wouldn't get out of the car, he would just beep and beep and beep on the horn, and it filled him with so much shame because his dad seemed like the most callous dad there was, And he would always walk across the grass to get there and look down and see it, see the dew, it wouldn't be dew in the afternoon, but see the sprinkler water had made the grass bright green. And now he realized the grass he was lying in was wet, but he was pretty sure it wasn't sprinkled. End of the moment, right? But you have the sensory and the interior, right? And so that idea of saying anything that you're writing about, you should go do it. Whatever it is, right? And so if you're writing about killing you, if you're writing about riding on an elephant, you should go find out how you can go ride on an elephant. Don't pretend you can imagine, because I promise you, you can't. And more importantly, then you get to say I wrote on an elephant. In real life, like, the point of the writing is to live, not the other way around. And so if you come up with something really cool, find an approximate, if it's something fantastical, like writing a dragon. Then you say, okay, I gotta write an elephant to sort of use that, right? And then you get both. But the writing personality is often a very, what would I say? A somewhat reserved personality and a somewhat non-kinetic person, right? Generally speaking, you know, we like to watch, we like to think, like you're on the train, you think you're watching someone and getting cool details, and then they look at you, and you have that moment like, oh, I'm a body, I'm here, they saw me. But as a writer, you thought, I'm just a brain. That's a default idea that a lot of writers have, a mistake that we make. But you are a body. And the only way you can write about bodies in the world is to be a body in the world. Yeah. And so that's, I don't even know if that's, I sort of went off super tangentially there, but it's all about like, what is the mechanisms for writing. So oftentimes if I write a scene one day, I then say, okay,